Hi, I'm Randi from Homewatch Caregivers, and we are a home health agency located in South Orange. And we provide home health care aids to people in their homes or in senior residential facilities. Some of the care that we give is hourly when somebody comes home from rehab or they have surgery and they need help for a short amount of time, and then they're well on their way to being full capacity. And sometimes people have diminished capacity and they need more or increasing care as they either, it could be for dementia care, it could be that they need help with activities of daily living. And we have social workers and nurses that oversee our licensed caregivers to help create the best scenario in their home. So Karen Frank, who's here today to do the program about gratitude, is one of our nurses that oversees some of the cases that we take care of. And she is not just a regular nurse, but she is a spiritual leader. And she is going to be speaking today about gratitude. So we're happy to see you all. And Karen, take it away.
Thank you. Well, this day was sort of the perfect orientation to what I came to talk about today, which is gratitude. And gratitude as opposed to what? So we have each had kind of a frustrating beginning. I know you guys were out in cyberspace somewhere trying to get into a room that isn't really a room, of course, it's really a screen. And as we all know, these are not normal times. This morning was a perfect example of a not normal way of getting together. And certainly we could go around and talk about all the ways that our lives have been disrupted. So if we went around the room right now and I asked everybody how you've been feeling in this past little while, we would get a lot of different answers. You may be generally fearful in a way you didn't used to be, or angry or stressed. You may be perfectly happy and grateful. So what I'd like to do with this time, if you are able to do your chat, wherever it is on your computer, I know on an iPad, it's under the 3 dots in your upper right-hand corner, and in your computer, it's down across the bottom. If you could press chat and type into the little space one word, just one word about how you are generally feeling these days, we will all be able to see a response up at the top of our own screens. So go ahead and chat to everyone how you have been generally feeling. Are we seeing it? Let's see. Somebody said fine, stressed, grateful. Anybody else have a generalized feeling? Hesitant, grateful. I love the hesitant. Okay, so it's a variety of answers. I thank you for your input there. First of all, what I'd like to do is, when I think about checking in with myself to see the answer to a question like I just asked you, how are you doing? For me, the process feels a little bit like checking the weather. You know, it feels grateful but stressed. Yeah, it's complicated, right? For me, it feels like checking my internal weather. to see how I'm really doing. And how we are is very, very complicated, as the answers showed us. You know, hesitant but grateful, grateful but stressed. It's not one thing. We aren't one thing. Very often, however, the more negative feelings take over our whole self. That's what we see on our own internal screen.
Hogan Bay
We
Road,
see our fears.
2,400 miles away.
Can we mute everybody? Yeah, I don't know if anybody else heard that interruption. So now everybody's muted. Good, thank you. What happens in life is that if we're scared, if we're stressed, if we're angry, those big emotions, those dramatic emotions take over how we're doing. Those are the things that we see. We can wake up in the morning stressed about something that happened the day before. Those very dark emotions can easily take us over. And what happens is that one begets another. If you're feeling angry about something and then something else minor happens, you may find that you're blowing up over something that you ordinarily wouldn't blow up about. This isn't innocuous, this process. It actually has an effect on our health as well as how we're feeling. So when we are living in a state of stressfulness or anger or even annoyance, we have physical things that happen to our bodies. So let me ask you, what happens, what do you experience when you're feeling stressed over a period of time in your bodies? You can unmute yourself if you have something to say here. What actually happens within you when you feel stressed?
Well, personally, I've had vertigo for a number of days, and I had it many years ago, but it is, it's more of a concern now. So I'm drinking tea with ginger, and I'm trying to relax more. But I think that is probably symptomatic of the generalized stress.
It also is often just dehydration. So drink a lot and see if that helps. Okay, so that is a change in a person. She's not ordinarily dizzy, but now she feels dizzy. And the question is that the stress of being dizzy, is it going in that direction, or is it going in the other direction, that stress is actually making you feel dizzy, which makes you feel more dizzy? I mean, it's possible that it's causal, but we're not sure which way. What else? What are some stress reactions, stress body things that happens to somebody else?
Yes, the first time this happened, I was very anxious, scared, and I felt my heartbeat going so fast. And I just cannot control it. I had to call my doctor and get some medication to calm me down.
Okay, thank you. So our cardiac system responds to stress by increased heart rate, sometimes increased heart rate, and also the perception that our heart is pounding, that we feel it in our chest in a different way. Our bodies respond by higher blood pressure. Our blood pressure is much higher when we are feeling stressed than when we are relaxed. What else is our heart doing? Do you know anything else? What happens to your breathing when you're feeling stressed?
You're breathing fast too.
Yes, you're faster and you're higher up in your chest. When we're relaxed, our breathing comes from much lower in our body. It comes from our very end of our chest and the beginning of our abdomen. Our bellies go up and down. It's a slow breathing rate. And when we're stressed or frightened or angry, our breathing is way up here. We might feel it's so high, in fact, that our throat feels tight. What are some other physical things?
Not in
So
your
we've got
stomach.
pounding heart, high blood pressure, we've got higher, faster breathing.
A knot in your stomach.
Not in your stomach. So our digestive system. So now we've got our cardiac system, we've got our breathing, our pulmonary system, and we've got our gastric system is also. Randi says a knot in our stomach. That's how it feels. But the truth is we have disrupted our digestion. Living in a constant stressful state can make us more constipated. It can give us diarrhea. It can go either way, but we're not properly digesting and we feel it as a knot in our stomach. So that's the third system that's involved by our being stressed. What else?
With the digestive system, I find that I did not have any appetite, so I've lost some weight. Some of
Yep.
my friends had gained weight, but for me, it's the opposite end. I lost like 10 pounds because I don't have
Okay.
appetite.
Thank you. So sometimes we stop eating and sometimes we increase our eating. Sometimes we increase our eating with what we call comfort foods because we get some sort of comfort by eating gooey, salty, high fat, easily digested, but not very good for us foods. And then we gain weight because we're stressed, whereas other people lose weight because they can't eat when they're stressed. Okay, that's the fourth system. What else? What else? How about your muscular system? What happens in your muscles, in your body when you're stressed?
Very tense.
Very tense. Your muscles are rigid. They're tensed up. You don't have good range of motion. So your muscular system is involved. What about what's happening in your head? It could be vertigo, though that is not a common stress result. It certainly could be contributing. What else happens in your head?
Ruminations.
Rumination. Okay, thank you. You can't stop thinking about something. You're ruminating. You're just playing it over and over. You may not be sleeping, or the opposite. You may be very sleepy during the day. You may have headaches. You may get tightness in your jaw. These are all the things we feel. There are other changes that are not good for our health. Our blood actually thickens in our veins when we are living in a state of stress. Our blood clots up more easily when we're in a state of stress. So many of us are on blood thinners regularly because our blood is too thick. But really that can be a side effect of just living under stress. And I'll just give a very short explanation of why that happens. There's something called the fight or flight response. And that response is supposed to keep us safer. And it usually does in a very stressful situation. Let's say that you are sleeping happily in your bed and you hear an intruder break into your house and you are now wide awake. all of those things that you just described happen. Your blood pressure goes up. Your hearing becomes very acute. We didn't say that. Our hearts pound. Our breathing is way up here because all of those changes, including our blood thickening, helps us either get out of the house and be safe or more able to fight the intruder. It is our primitive body helping us stay safe because we have an intruder in the house. So you need increased blood pressure in that moment to get out of the house, to get up, to get going. You need even to have thicker blood, because what if, God forbid, you get injured by this intruder? Your body doesn't want you to bleed out. So that is all a very adaptive and very wise decision of our bodies that we have nothing to do with. It just happens in order to keep us safe in an unsafe situation. But what's the problem for us now? The problem is that we aren't living in that situation, even though our bodies still somehow act as if they are. So if we are feeling stressed because of the COVID situation, our body needn't give us high blood pressure, faster heart rate, more thicker blood, shutting down the proper circulation to our stomach. None of that is a positive adaptation for the kinds of stress that we live with in this day and age, because we're not fighting off intruders during the night very often. So those stresses that we all have right now, or any time really, still have those body reactions, which turn out then not to be good adaptations, but it turns out to be bad for us, bad for our health. So what is a good antidote to these physical problems that we have because we live in a stressful situation? I would like to propose that developing more of a sense of gratitude in our lives for the things that are good, the things that we are so thankful for, but very often we aren't aware of them. We are drawn to drama, whether we like it or not. We notice the dramatic, most often negative kinds of news. We are drawn to the things that upset people. We need to look in our lives for the things that are really our blessings, for the things that are right in our lives, because they're quieter. The things that are good are sometimes dramatic. You know, a child gets married, a birth of a grandchild, those kind of dramatic things. And very often, if we think, what are we grateful for? Our minds go to those big things. But those big things are few and far between, and they're not going to hold us in the same way as the ongoing stress of living in a COVID world, of being isolated, of all the negative things that we notice. We need to train ourselves to look for the small, the quiet, but the happy and good things that we have in our life. So this is really a practice that I'm talking about. This is not something that we don't have to work on. We need to notice the things that we are lucky about, because that's how we're going to combat the stress hormones in our body that are created by the stresses that we know we have. So a real antidote, a physical antidote happening in our body, is to look for the opposite of stress, to look for the things that make us feel grateful. And if we talked about what does gratitude feel like in our bodies, pretty much we would be describing the exact opposite of what stress feels like. Our breathing would be easy and lower in our body. Our blood pressure would be lower. Our muscles in our body would not be rigid and tight. Our whole body would feel different. Now that, I know some of you came from yoga today, and yoga is, the word yoga, I don't know if you know this, the word yoga means union. And it's the union of our body and our mind, because we all know truthfully in our bodies that what's going on in the body is affected by what's going on in the mind, and vice versa. We can affect how our emotions are by changing how our body is, and we can affect how our body is by changing our emotions. So yoga is actually a stress reduction for us and helps us find gratitude by softening the body, by stretching the body in good ways in order to create that feeling of calm and well-being. So yoga is not just an exercise class. It's not like aerobics. It's not like other things. It really has that kind of emotional, spiritual component to it. And once we start looking for things that we are grateful for, the magic of it is that we find more and more things. Just like if we declare ourselves so annoyed that the car didn't start today, we find a million other annoyances because it's contagious within ourselves. Annoyance, anger, stress is not only contagious between us and other people, and we all know that if we live with other people, that we can catch their annoyance or anger or irritability. We can catch it from them. The same thing is true, happily, with gratitude, with joy, with peacefulness. All the antidotes for stress are equally contagious. Contagious within ourselves. If we feel grateful for something, it leads to more noticing of things to be grateful for. So the antidote for all those negative things we started talking about is really going to look for the things we're grateful for, because it has a real effect on how we do in our bodies. But it does, like any practice, if you practice the piano, everybody knows you have to practice it to be good at it. If you practice yoga, you know you have to keep practicing to be good at it. The same thing is actually true with gratitude. Some people are more grateful by default, perhaps. but everybody can change it in themselves by paying attention to it. Because it's hard, as I said earlier, it's hard to find the things sometimes if we're in a dark place that we're grateful for because of that screen just so easily filling up with all the things that are wrong with our life currently. That's easy. That's low-hanging fruit. We need to find those other little things. We have to go looking for it. So anybody have anything to say? Because then I'm going to go on into gratitude practices. How do we actually increase our gratitude? But I want to give you all the reasons first. Does anybody have any questions or comments at this point? All you have to do is unmute yourself and speak. Anybody? Yes, go ahead.
I think it's been like a few months now that we've gone through this, and we have for me, I have sort of accepted and settled with the COVID because it's not only affecting me, it's affecting everybody. So when I think that we are all in the same situation, and I try to find ways like not watching the TV, every detail of it. That's the first thing I stopped doing. And so I'm beginning to adjust with the new way that we have to live all the uncertainties that we have. And also my faith is also helping me.
Thank you so much. You had a lot of wisdom in a very short report right there. First of all, you talked about avoiding negativity. We need to avoid negativity, which usually means turning off the TV, because it is an incredibly negative little box that we've got access to all the time. So one of the things to do to move in a positive direction is to get away from the negative direction. I would go so far as to limit ourselves from negative interactions with people. We all know people who just have fetchy, whiny, complainy, everything out of their mouth is negative and critical. Just to limit those conversations, just not to engage in it. One of the practices for limiting negativity actually is going on a complaint fast. That means if you yourself have just a list of things that annoy you, instead of visiting them, instead of developing them and talking about them and spreading them to your friends and family, just find yourself ready to say it and say, no, I'm on a complaint fast. I'm not even going to say it. When I tell people that, they say, oh, but it's so good to vent. And you know what? It isn't. It might be good to vent once on a topic, but what happens? You just do it again and again to everybody you know, and it doesn't help you, because if it really helped you, it would be gone, right? Venting means it's out of the room. But when we vent our negative feelings about something and we find we want to say it again and again and again, it's not doing us any good. We need to go on a complaint fast. So Vanjie, is that your name?
Yes.
I'm very glad you said that about limiting negativity, because that's a good first step. And then it is easier when our screen isn't so negative to find the positive things. So one of the things that I would suggest we do is, as you wake up in the morning, oh, and Vanjie also talked about a prayer practice. So a lot of people who have prayer practice or meditation practice do find themselves more open to seeing the positive in their life. So one of the things that we all can do in order to increase our gratitude is, as you wake up in the morning, before you even sit up, to ask yourself, what is in this day that you're looking forward to, that you are looking forward to? Or to simply be grateful that we're still here, that our bodies still work. And there are prayers in many of our faith communities that are part of morning prayer or morning ritual. But any person can actually just do that for themselves, can open their eyes and thank the cosmos or God or nature or yourself for still being here and able to begin your day. And it's a beautiful way of starting the day, even before you get out of bed, to acknowledge it could have been otherwise, you know? The second thing is to do that at the end of the day, but doing it more specifically. It's called a gratitude journal. Has anybody kept one or know about these things? It's a gratitude list or a gratitude journal. And as you get into bed, some people use a little notebook next to their bedside and they write the day. Today's Wednesday, and today I am grateful for. And you actually list the things that happened that day, that you saw that day, people you spoke to that day, news you may have gotten that day, and just list between 3 and 8 kinds of things that you are grateful for in that day before you go to bed. And it is guaranteed to help you fall asleep with less stress, less fear, and somebody talked about rumination being something that we do when we're stressed. This would help with the rumination of things that are wrong and, in fact, introduce the things that are right. And it can be something as simple as, I saw a cardinal in the bushes this morning, or something much bigger. You know, my child is getting confirmed on Zoom, whatever's happening. But make a little list. There's another practice that's related to this, and it's called having a gratitude buddy. And that is sort of a combination of our morning gratitude practice in the evening, and it happens during the day. And this is best done if you are somebody who uses text on your phone. But you set it up with a friend that during the day, you're going to text one another every time you find something to be grateful for. And I did this with one of my kids for months, actually. And I was just getting pings all day from one of my kids who was the least likely of my kids to be naturally grateful. And she did it. I was shocked by the gratitudes that came to me on my phone from her during the day, things I would not have imagined she would notice. And I was pinging them my own right back to her. It was an incredibly positive experience, not only for each of us, but between us. It really was a beautiful several months that we were doing it, where we were interacting in such a positive way. Now, for those of you who don't text, you could do it by email, but you should find somebody who you think may also enjoy looking for the good during the day. And of all those 3 gratitude practices that I've talked about already. I think this one, this gratitude buddy, is the most positive because it happens seamlessly all day. And what happens? We notice so many more things to be grateful for than we would if we weren't doing it, because they're just like highlighted. I see something and say, oh, Jessie would like to hear about this. And I would send it on to her. And I found myself in the months I was doing this, gratitude was constant. It was on the front page of my screen all the time because I was constantly looking for it. Any questions about, yes, Randy?
I think that has another benefit, especially now when people seem more isolated, that having that
Beautiful.
personal connection with one person, it strengthens them, and you know that there's another person there. So it's
Mhm.
I have a cousin who has a gratitude jar, and every day before she goes to bed, she writes little things and she puts them in the jar. And at the end of the year, she takes them out and reads them, and it's very exciting for her. And she always talks about that. But
Oh,
I think,
that is nice.
that's for her, and I guess you can do that with your journal in the
Right.
same way. But
Right.
this having a buddy is really kind of special, especially.
It's really alive.
Yeah,
It is alive. I love what you said about, especially at this time,
yeah,
to find somebody to be sharing with like that on a daily, several times a day basis is really a beautiful practice.
right. I like that.
So another, when I first heard about this practice, it was called having a bliss buddy. And bliss seemed a little maybe extravagant, but it really does start to feel that way when you have a bliss buddy.
Yes.
All right, there are a couple of other things that are practically available to us to do in order to feel more gratitude. And this one's a little more complicated than having a bliss buddy or looking for the things we're grateful for. This is finding the good even in the difficult. It's finding a difficult situation, which is pretty easy to find, and then saying, but is there something that happens that's good about this, even if I'm not saying, well, I'm glad this happened because if it didn't, I wouldn't have ... But it is looking for the good in a difficult time. So it's kind of like recontextualizing the situation in order to find the blessing. So for those of us who have canceled our Thanksgiving, it sounds like a very bad thing, right? We don't have Thanksgiving this year on top of not having ... But is there anything about it that we can look toward that is good, that we can do, that is a good thing? Any answers? We all could use some. Oh, Yanji, you're muted.
I think even though I'm not going to be celebrating Thanksgiving with the family, we have all decided on this. We are going to probably do a Zoom and talk with each other. And, even before we start the feast or whatever we're doing. And it's better to be safe. For me, in my head, it's better to be safe than have a big celebration and then you all end up being sick.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the things you're doing is a new ritual, a little Zoom thing. Another thing you're doing is recognizing the goodness, the gratitude of your actions to cancel Thanksgiving. Another thing people are doing is finding a new ritual like Zoom. Some families decided that they were all going to have Thanksgiving in their own homes, but they were each going to make the same dessert and share the recipe, and then be eating the dessert together and talking about how that dessert worked out. To find other ways of connecting rather than being around the table all together. I know that in our family, we have set up, because I haven't seen my kids in a really long time, we have set up a weekly time that any of the kids who can actually show up on a family Zoom. And it is a new tradition we've been doing for many, many weeks now. And yet it's a real tradition in the family. So what does it do? Obviously, it allows us to keep up with each other's news or situations. And it's the kind of thing that I fully expect is going to continue even after the COVID restrictions are done. So there are things that we can look at that are positive, even in a difficult situation.
Karen,
Yes.
I just heard a friend of mine was telling me that she always complained about how much work it was, and the whole thing, just running around. It was, the meal would take hours to prepare, and then it's over, and there was almost like a resentment about it. Like it was it was so much work, and it wasn't worth it. And now her mom is actually is live streaming the cooking for her kids. So she's going to be showing, she's up there in age, but she's learned how to use Zoom. And so she is doing the whole feast from soup to nuts, but just for she and her husband. But her kids are all, have families of their own, but they never really knew how to do it. So they're going to watch their mom do it in her way, and kind of like give all the secrets, like a cooking show. Another family I know is doing, instead of buying all the food for their own meal, they're just buying food to give to the food bank. So they're going to donate all that food, and then take a like a sort of a meditative walk, like a quiet hike in the woods, things that they would typically never have the time to do because everybody's so busy. And it's like, wow, this is really a day for gratitude, right? A day to give thanks for nature, and they're just going to take a walk. So I long to do that.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Taking a walk where we are more mindful is the way to add to our gratitude journals, for sure, because probably being home for as many months as we've been home and taking walks, probably we could have another whole hour talking about the kinds of things you noticed this year that you've never noticed before. Many people have started gardens who never gardened. My bird feeding store, where I frequent, has told me that the owner of the bird feeding store told me that people who have never had bird feeders before now have found the joy of bird watching. There are all kinds of more mindful practices that are happening, but for us to be grateful for them is to take yet another step. It's to say, wow, I wouldn't have known that my garden had this particular flower if I didn't notice it, or I've never seen a bird in that color, or I've never noticed the number of butterflies in the summer. Things that we are noticing that we didn't notice before, or that we newly appreciate. And Michelle, I think what you said about doing good for others is a huge part of gratitude. I think that if we can remember to do things for others, even if we are staying home, there are phone calls, there are food donations, there are all kinds of things that we can do as part of a community, which is an essential part of our being grateful for the ability to do some sort of service. So I want to end a little bit late. I'm sorry. I have a poem for you about noticing things that may not have been noticed before, or that may not have been valued before. The name of this poem is Praise Song. Praise the light of late November, the thin sunlight that goes deep in the bones. Praise the crows chattering in the oak trees. Though they are clothed in night, they do not despair. Praise what little there's left. The small boats of milkweed pods, husks, hulls, shells, the architecture of trees. Praise the meadow of dried weeds, yarrow, goldenrod, chicory, the remains of summer. Praise the blue sky that hasn't cracked yet. Praise the sun slipping down behind the beech nuts. Praise the quilt of leaves that covers the grass, scarlet oak, sweet gum, sugar maple. Though darkness gathers, praise our crazy fallen world. It's all we have, and it's never enough. By Barbara Crooker.
Who was that by?
So to Barbara Crooker.
That's nice.
So to find the beauty even in the naked trees, the end of the season, instead of feeling sad about the end of our growing season, which seems natural to feel sad about it. But she found a way to find the beauty in it. And that's our job. That's really a gratitude practice, for looking for the things that we may not have noticed that we can be grateful for. And that should be our practice going forth, and it will help us be happier and healthier. Thanks for having me. And thanks for coming on, even though it was such a challenge to find it. But good for you all for making it.
Thank you so much. That was so nice.
Thank you.